Welcome to Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back. Thank you for joining me in this episode. My name is Patrick, and I'm Frack. Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back is a show where we will discuss different aspects of fandom and how they relate to the gospel. And so in this episode, I'm going to be going through an episode of Bleach, Thousand Year Blood War, and connect it to teachings from the Bible. And so I'll continue to study Thousand Year Blood War until the conclusion of the series/season. Now I'll go in a different direction if the season goes on a hiatus or a season break, and it could be anything ranging from another anime, comic books, or movies, Star Wars, anything like that. And the name of the show comes from my dad, who dubbed my brother and me Frick and Frack since we were kids. So this episode is entitled The Fire. Now, I want to put this out there before I get even further along into this, that I'm going to spoil the mess out of it. So I want you, if you have not watched this episode yet, pause. All right, here we go. Now let's get into the spoilers. So in this episode of The Fire, one of the first things that I want to talk about is that we get to see Yamamoto's power fully shown and explored. One of the things that they even say is that his power, if used too long, could in fact destroy the Soul Society. Now, his Bankai has four powers/four uses. The first is kind of his sword is sealed with hellfire, and whenever he swings it, it leads to destroying anything that was in his path. That it's just completely disintegrated because it's so hot. The second form is that he has this kind of hellfire armor that, as quoted in the episode, is 15 million degrees Celsius. And so nothing's going to be able to touch him, nothing's going to be able to hurt him. And in fact, just even being near him is going to kill him. One of the things that Yawaba even says that if it wasn't for the Bleach in his going through his veins, he would have been killed instantaneously. Then the third use is that anyone that he has turned to ash with his sword, he can bring those ashes back to life and use them as his own personal army. And then his fourth is an extremely powerful flame attack. And so in this fight, we see Yamamoto going up against Yawaba, and the first part of the fight, I mean, the fight scenes, the choreography is just top notch. It's great. It's fantastic. There's nothing to complain about with this fight, other than I could take 6, 7, 8 episodes of this kind of fight. It's just the action sequences and the animation, everything's just that great. Uh, During the whole fight, Yamamoto has Yawaba on the ropes. Yawaba is able to keep up, but it's very much like a boxing match or an MMA fight, where the one person is clearly a better fighter, more powerful, stronger, things like that, and getting them, they're backed in the corner. Yawaba the only thing he can do is basically dip, dodge, dive, and very much on a defensive fight. And so when he finally uses his fourth power of his Bankai and kills him, that's when the person says, "I'm sorry, I failed you. I couldn't bring your plans to fruition," and makes Yamamoto curious. And once again, I'll do another spoiler warning. Big spoiler warning. The person that Yamamoto had been fighting this entire time was, in fact, another member of the Stern Ritter, Royd Lloyd. I didn't come up with these names. And his power was yourself. So I don't know if Royd was as powerful as Yawaba, and if Yamamoto could have actually beaten Yawaba, but we won't know, because when Yawaba revealed himself, he stole Yamamoto's Bankai, and Yamamoto thought it was because no one fully understood his Bankai, because he had never used all four of its powers in front of anyone else before. But what it comes to find out is that Yawaba had said that only he could have taken Yamamoto's Bankai and used it. No one else would have been capable of using it. So my understanding is that uh, Yawaba probably is more powerful than Yamamoto, and Yamamoto is just beneath him. So the other cool thing that happens in this episode is that when Yawaba reveals himself, the true Yawaba, that he had in fact been letting Royd Lloyd fight so that he could go and talk to Aizen. That was his whole strategy. Because we come to find out that Aizen is considered another special war power. And so that's one of those things where we get this interesting, conversation because Yawaba's like, hey, if you come serve me, I'll let you out. Eisen's like, I'm not gonna serve anyone. And so even though they wanted similar things, like no one's gonna, neither one of them's gonna serve the other. So I would just, so the conversation is fascinating. So even though the big thing for this fight is Yamamoto versus Yawaba, or at least with now that we know with the spoiler, Yamamoto going full fledged against someone else. But the conversation between Yawaba and Aizen is fascinating, and bringing Aizen back and where he's being kept is just really interesting. And I can't wait to see more of that and going forward. And so then the last thing that I kind of want to point out in this episode is that we get another glimpse into Uryu's studying of Quincy history and how Quincy's and Soul Reapers have always been at odds. And we get a big spoiler learning that Yamamoto wiped out the Quincy's 1,000 years ago instead of 200 years ago that we've been told this entire time. So there was an event that happened 1,000 years ago that Yamamoto was at the center of, because when he opens up that page, you clearly see an at prime Yamamoto burning away at Quincy's, and so Uryu's clearly at this point recognizing that Quincy's and Soul Reapers cannot uh, be together, and they'll always be forever at odds. So that's the stuff that interested me in this episode. The biblical theme that came to mind when I was reading it is Proverbs 24, verse 17, which says, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. Uh, in this episode, as I was talking about the fight, and I'm never going to be able to do the fight justice. I'm going to be posting pictures here in the video, but I'll also be posting on our Instagram if you're a podcast listener, some of the images. But seriously, go watch this episode for this fight. It is phenomenal. And so, but in this time during the fight, you can tell that Yamamoto's not taking joy out of the fight, and because there's other animes like Dragon Ball where Goku and Vegeta thrive in fighting. There's even other characters in this anime, Kenpachi Zaraki, who lives for fighting. He doesn't care about anything else. He just wants to fight. And so Yamamoto is not this way. Now, during this fight, he's angry. He's extremely angry that all of his Soul Reapers that are underneath his command have been killed. His good friend Sasakibe was killed in this combat, and he's just not happy. Now, his only kind of little moment was when he uses his third ability to torture who he thinks is Yawaba with the ashes of his former Stern Ritters. Uh, uh, you know, kind of pokes the bear a little bit. But other than that, he's not taking joy in this and 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 in this fight. Uh, but we're also in full swing of sports right now with the NFL, college football, basketball, the NHL. They're all going, and baseball is winding down at the time of this recording with the World Series. And I think of sports rivalries Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Cardinals, Ohio State, Michigan, uh, and any others. In the comments, tell me what your favorite rivalry is to watch. And I did sports myself. I was a swimmer and I played water polo. I played basketball. Wasn't really any good at any of it. I was okay, uh, but we won. We had our victories, and like this Bible verse is saying, do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. I've never been a fan of gloating over victory. I also not being poor sports when you lose. Um, unfortunately, there have been a couple moments in my own sport career that I can think of where I was a poor sport. I was a sore loser, but also was a ungrateful winner, rubbing in the face of the people that I beat in whatever sport I was playing, and I've never been a fan of that. And so I think of this, and I think of Yamamoto's action. That like I said, he's not perfect. He pokes the bear a little bit, like I said, with his third use of his the third ability of his Bankai. Uh, but I think one of the things for us that is important for us to know and to learn from is that we can rejoice in victory, but we should never rub it in the face of the people that we bested in competition, or if we got a job promotion and someone else didn't, that we were rivals for, or anything like that. We shouldn't rub it in other people's faces, because that's just not a Christ-like attitude. I think of Jesus, who is the Son of God, washing the feet of his disciples. Like, they called him Lord, they called him Rabbi, yet he washed their feet. And so in this, I think I take Proverbs 24:17 to heart. And I want to encourage each of you to do it as well. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls. Let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. Even if someone that you disagree with, you don't like, or not if you don't like, work on that part. But if they're your competition, or if they're your rival in some form or fashion, you know, don't don't rejoice when they stumble, and instead remember that person is a child of God and they should be treated as such. And so that's what I really want to encourage you this week. When you listen to this episode or watch it on YouTube, remember that do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and let not your heart be glad when he stumbles. All right, so we're going to wrap this up, and so I'm going to rate this episode. And so, what do you guys think? You think it's a 2.5, a 3? Nah, this episode's a perfect 5. 5, full on 5. There is nothing wrong with this episode. There's nothing that I can complain about, except for I wish there was just more of it. There's 500 episodes of this kind of action and stuff. But anyway, like I said, nothing to complain about this episode. Great action. The animation is top notch. Music, top notch. Choreography, top notch. Voice acting, top notch. Nothing to complain about. And the best part is that the story moves forward too. It wasn't just, obviously the big draw for this fight was Yamamoto going full power on Yawaba, even though as I said, we come to find out is Royd Lloyd. It's just darn right perfect. So watch this episode. It's a great episode for any anime fan, action fan. If you're a Bleach fan, this is a must-watch episode. Do not skip this episode. It's just too perfect to not watch. Anyone, if you disagree with me, or you think there might have been something that could have been done better, or you want to talk about the biblical lesson that I talked about with Proverbs 24:17, leave a comment below, or reach out to me on email at fricketyfrack talkback@gmail.com, or reach out to me on Twitter at fricketyf, or at fricketyfrack on Instagram and Facebook. Remember that I love you, most importantly, that God loves you, and go release your Bankai.